They didn't hurt you by mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing. They aimed, and they fired. Straight at the places they knew would break you. Let that sink in. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't confusion. This was an act of intention. Premeditated. Deliberate. They measured the damage, and they chose to inflict it anyway. Now here you are, wondering if you should give them a second chance. Let me save you the time. Don't. Stoicism teaches us this. Not every wound must be revisited. Not every betrayal deserves a reply. And not everyone who breaks you should be welcomed back into your peace. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth. But if they cannot, then stop interfering." Let that be your standard. Let truth, not guilt, guide your choices. Forgiveness is not foolish. But repeating the cycle with those who showed no remorse? That is foolish. The Stoics believed in reason. And reason says, if someone chooses to destroy your peace, once they reveal who they are, believe them. They did not slip. They acted from their nature. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But let's be honest. You're not imagining this one. You lived it. You felt it. You carry it. So don't gaslight yourself. Don't pretend it wasn't what it was. They damaged you with intent. And now you're rising from that damage. Wiser. Stronger. Sharper. This pain? It refined you. But it doesn't mean you owe the cause of it anything. Distance is not weakness. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are protection. They are self-respect. A Stoic does not waste time trying to change others. They master themselves, their reactions, their energy, their peace. And holding your ground? That is mastery. Let them go. Let their choices be their own burden. You do not carry their shame. You do not owe your healing to those who caused your wounds. You owe it to yourself to move forward, to hold the line, to stay calm, to stay clear, because you now know they damaged you with intent. So don't return to the fire expecting warmth. Be the fire, unshaken, unmoved, unbreakable. You don't need to scream to prove your strength. You don't need revenge to prove you were wronged. Your silence, your distance, your refusal to be pulled back into chaos, these speak louder than anything you could say. That is the Stoics' path. They will notice your absence. They will feel the cold where your warmth used to be. But that is not your concern. Your concern is discipline. Your concern is peace. Your concern is moving forward with dignity. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This pain, they gave it. But how you carry it, that's your power. Do not respond in kind. Do not stoop to their level. You are not here to trade wounds or match their cruelty. You are here to grow beyond it. There is honor in restraint. There is wisdom in walking away. Not everything broken needs to be fixed. Not every story deserves a sequel. You gave them space. You gave them trust. You gave them a version of yourself that believed in their better nature. They chose to shatter that. So now you choose something else. Peace over drama. Clarity over confusion. Self-respect over self-betrayal. You didn't lose anything of value when they left or when you walked away. You only lost the illusion. Now you're free to rebuild, without compromise, without fear, without carrying the dead weight of someone else's choices. The Stoics were not cold, they were clear. They felt deeply, but they did not act emotionally. They understood that emotions come and go, but reason must stay. They chose stillness in the storm. So must you. There is no justice in going back to what broke you. There is only delay. Delay of healing. Delay of peace. Delay of the version of you that's waiting beyond all of this. So hold your ground. Not out of spite, but out of self-worth. You're not being cruel by cutting someone off. You're being kind to yourself. You're saying, "I will no longer participate in my own suffering." Let them call you heartless. Let them call you distant. Let them tell others you changed. Because you did. And that change saved you. You owe them nothing. Not a response. Not a justification. Not access to the new version of you that rose from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Stay grounded. Stay silent. Stay free. They damaged you with intent. You protect yourself with purpose. And that is power. They expected you to chase. They expected you to explain. They expected you to fall apart the moment they stepped away. But you didn't. You stayed still. You chose discipline over desperation. And that silence, that composure, it terrified them more than any words ever could. Because silence speaks. It says, I saw what you did. And I'm done. It says, you are no longer worth the energy it takes to even be angry. It says, I am not coming back. People like that, those who harm with intention, rarely expect consequences. They expect forgiveness on demand. They expect doors to stay open just because they've returned to knock. But not this time. You've seen the truth now. You've felt what it's like to be treated like you're disposable. You've lived the moment when someone who claimed to care chose to wound you. And once you've seen that, really seen it, you don't unsee it. The path forward is narrow but clean. No bitterness. No vengeance. Just distance. Just boundaries made of iron and silence. Because some people don't learn through conversation. They only learn through absence. You didn't come this far just to fall back into old patterns. You didn't endure all this pain just to return to the source of it. This is your turning point. Not a pause. Not a detour. A break. Final. Necessary. Liberating. The Stoics would tell you. When someone shows you what they value, pay attention. When someone shows you what they're capable of, remember it. Don't hate them. Don't curse them. Just release them. They may never feel guilt. They may never admit fault. But that's not your burden anymore. You don't need their apology to find closure. Closure is a choice. And you've already made it every time you didn't respond. Every time you chose peace over pettiness. Every time you took one more step away. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You didn't lose your heart. You found your spine. And in that clarity, in that strength, in that silence, you've reclaimed your power. This isn't about winning. This is about healing. And healing requires space. Space from anything and anyone who once thought your pain was a game. They damaged you with intent. You are protecting yourself with wisdom. This is the Stoic way. Not loud. Not dramatic. But unshakable. Keep walking. Don't turn around. You've already seen what's behind you. Now it's time to discover what's ahead. And what's ahead is everything they tried to take from you. Peace. Purpose. Power. And most of all, freedom. There's something sacred about the moment you decide to stop explaining yourself. When you finally stop giving chances to those who used every one of them to get closer to your weak spots. When you stop hoping they'll change and start accepting that you must. They had their moment. They knew what they were doing. And now, you're doing what you must, protecting your energy like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. Every time you allowed someone back in who didn't value you, you paid for it. In time. In trust. In inner peace. Now you've seen the cost. Now you've seen the cost. Now you've chosen to stop bleeding for those who never tried to stop the cut. This is not about pride. This is not about ego. This is about alignment. Stoicism teaches, you cannot control others. Only your own mind. Your own boundaries. Your own actions. So you build the wall, not to trap others out of bitterness, but to protect what's finally beginning to heal. That wall is made of your choices. Your silence. Your restraint. Your refusal to negotiate your worth ever again. You will be called selfish. You will be misunderstood. But understand this, people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will always be offended by your growth. Let them be. Growth isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be clean. Clean breaks. Clean decisions. Clean self-respect. There is a version of you that existed before the damage. But the version that came after, that's the one who knows better. That's the one who carries wisdom instead of wounds. And it was pain that gave you that. It was betrayal that taught you who not to be. So don't regret it. Honor it. Then outgrow it. Because the real victory isn't in getting them back. It's in never needing them again. It's in standing tall with a quiet mind. It's in building a life so stable, no storm they cause can shake it. You owe it to your future self to be done for good. No more second chances. No more softening your standards just to keep someone in your life who wouldn't lift a finger to keep you in theirs. No more bending. Hold the line. Not just for revenge. Not to prove a point. But because that's who you are now. Calm. Unreachable by the chaos. Immovable by their excuses. Rooted in reason. And if they ever look back, let them. Let them remember the bridge they burned. Let them feel the absence of what they once had the privilege of knowing. You don't need closure from them. You are the closure. You are the full stop. The ending they wrote with their actions, and you sealed with your silence. You are the fire now. Not to destroy, but to cleanse. To renew. To light your way forward. And forward is the only direction that matters. They damaged you with intent. You rise with purpose. And from this point on, there is no going back. Every step you take now is sacred. It's not just movement, it's reclamation. You're not walking away to prove a point. You're walking away because staying would mean shrinking. And you've already done that for too long. You bent yourself into shapes to keep their comfort intact. You watered down your truth to avoid confrontation. You tolerated disrespect dressed as misunderstanding. But every compromise cost you a piece of your clarity. Every ignored red flag chipped away at your self-worth. Until finally, something inside you refused to stay silent. That inner voice, the one you kept suppressing, finally rose louder than your fear of letting go. And when it did, you understood. This isn't abandonment. This is alignment. You don't owe your loyalty to someone who used your loyalty as leverage. You don't owe your softness to someone who mistook it for weakness. You don't owe your healing to the hands that caused the wound. Let them live with what they did. You live with what you're becoming. And what you're becoming is someone they no longer recognize. Because you're no longer someone they can manipulate. They can't guilt you, shame you, or guilt trip their way back in. You've stepped out of the loop. That cycle they used to pull you into? It's broken. Because you finally learned the truth. Not every connection is meant to last. Some are meant to wake you up. Some are meant to show you what you will never accept again. You've stopped negotiating with your peace. You've stopped arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you. You've stopped hoping for an apology from people who feel no remorse. This is the cost of becoming whole. It's not always loud. It's not always celebrated. Often, it's quiet, lonely, uncomfortable. But it's honest. And honesty is rare. Especially when you stop lying to yourself. Because for the longest time, you held on to the idea of who they could be. But now, you're making decisions based on who they are. Not their potential. Not their promises. Not their apologies, spoken only when consequences knock at their door. You see them clearly now. And in that clarity, you've reclaimed your time. Your space. Your silence. There's power in the refusal. The refusal to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. The refusal to carry shame that isn't yours. The refusal to play the role of the bigger person just to keep others comfortable. This isn't bitterness. This is boundaries. This is clarity. This is you, stepping fully into your own energy and not flinching. You are no longer emotionally accessible to those who dishonored your presence. And no, they don't get to know the new you. They don't get updates. They don't get a seat in your healing. They gave up that right when they made their choice. So keep going. Let your silence echo louder than your anger ever could. Let your peace be your protest. Let your progress be your reply. This is the Stoic way, measured, still, resolved. Not vindictive, not reactive, but decisive. They will notice your absence. They will feel the weight of your absence where your presence used to lift them. And maybe one day, they'll understand what they lost. But by then, you'll be long gone. Unreachable, unshakable, unapologetically whole. You no longer orbit around their chaos. You've stepped out of their gravity, the pool of manipulation, guilt, and confusion that once kept you tethered. You've stopped answering questions that don't deserve answers. You've stopped fighting for space in a room that was never built to hold your worth. And look at you now, still standing, still breathing, still becoming. They thought breaking you would end you. But all it did was awaken something deeper, something sharper, something that no longer accepts half-hearted love or conditional loyalty. Now, every step forward is cleaner. You no longer walk with the weight of needing to be understood by those who never truly listened. You no longer twist yourself into explanations for people who were never interested in hearing the truth. You no longer shrink to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You've chosen truth over familiarity, peace over approval, freedom over false hope. You've learned that some people come into your life not to stay, but to teach, to reveal the parts of you that were too trusting, too forgiving, too open to the wrong ones. They were the fire that burned the illusion away. And now that the smoke has cleared, you finally see. You see who they are. You see what you allowed. And most importantly, you see who you are now because of it. That version of you who used to beg for understanding? Gone. That version who rationalized their behavior to protect the connection? Gone. The one who accepted apologies with no action behind them? Gone. Now, you guard your energy like a temple. Now, you don't entertain chaos disguised as passion. Now, your peace is non-negotiable. And no, it hasn't been easy. The nights were long. The silence was loud. The memories hit hard. But you didn't fold. You didn't go back. You didn't reach out. That took strength most people will never understand. Because the hardest part isn't leaving. It's staying gone. It's staying silent. It's not responding when everything inside you wants closure that won't come. But with every day you chose not to return, you prove to yourself that you've outgrown the person who once settled. And the more distance you create, the more clearly you see. Their access to you was a privilege, not a right. One they abused. One they lost. You no longer romanticize potential. You no longer fill in the gaps for people who refuse to meet you halfway. You no longer lower your standards to keep a bond that was always breaking. You're not hard now. You're wise. You're not cold. You're clear. And that clarity? It cost you everything they couldn't give, and gave you everything they couldn't take. So keep walking. Eyes forward. Mind still. Heart guarded, but open for what's real. For what's earned. For what feels like peace, not chaos in disguise. You don't go back to the fire once you've learned how to build your own warmth. You don't beg for water from a well that poisoned you. They damaged you with intent. And you? You rose with direction. This is the path now. Clean. Quiet. Unforgiving in its discipline. Unapologetic in its truth. Keep going. You haven't even met the most powerful version of yourself yet. But you will. And when you do, you'll thank the pain. Not because it was right, but because it woke you up. And once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep. You can't unsee the truth. You can't unfeel the weight of that betrayal. You can't unknow the cost of staying in a place that drained you day by day in the name of love, loyalty, or history. They mistook your patience for permission. They mistook your kindness for weakness. They mistook your silence for surrender. But you weren't silent because you had nothing to say. You were silent because they were no longer worth the words. And that silence? It became your strength. People like them don't expect you to walk away quietly. They expect a storm. They expect you to beg, to fight, to collapse into apology just to keep the peace. But you didn't. You stood up. You held your ground. You let them go without theatrics. And that scared them far more than anger ever could. Because your stillness told the truth. You're done. Done waiting. Done hoping. Done handing out grace to people who treat it like a free pass to hurt you again. You've changed, and they know it. Not because you said it, but because you've disappeared from the places they used to find you. The emotional spaces. The vulnerable spaces. The inner world you used to let them into, without question. Now there are locks where there used to be open doors. Now there are boundaries where there used to be excuses. Now there is peace where there used to be noise. And that transformation? It didn't happen all at once. It was quiet. It was painful. But it was necessary. You learned to be your own closure. You learned to heal in silence. You learned to let go, not because they deserved it, but because you did. You deserved the weight lifted. You deserved the freedom. You deserved a life where your energy isn't wasted on people who only show up when it benefits them. They damaged you with intent. Let that truth stay with you, not to fuel hate, but to protect clarity. To remind you why you never go back. Because healing isn't about pretending it didn't happen. Healing is about seeing it clearly and choosing differently now. It's about creating space for the peace you've never known, because you were too busy cleaning up after other people's messes. But no more. You're not the caretaker of someone else's brokenness. You're not the emotional dumping ground for those who refuse to face themselves. You're not the one who bends while others break. You've evolved. Now, your time is sacred. Your attention is currency. Your presence is earned. And not everyone gets to have it, especially those who once handled it so carelessly. So let them wonder where you went. Let them question why you're no longer reachable. Let them sit with the silence they created. Because you are not angry. You are not bitter. You are free. And that is something they'll never understand, until they finally meet someone who treats them the way they treated you. But by then, you'll be light years ahead. Not out of revenge. Not out of pride. But because peace became your priority, and they weren't part of it. You've stopped explaining yourself. Stopped making exceptions. Stopped pretending that your love should come at the cost of your self-respect. This is who you are now. Steady. Clear. Rooted in truth. And no one, not even those who once held your heart, can shake you from that. You've already walked through the fire. Now you carry the flame. Now you carry the flame, not to burn, but to illuminate. To light your path forward. To remind yourself of what you survived. Of who you became in the wreckage they left behind. This flame is sacred. It is not rage. It is not revenge. It is awareness, sharp, calm, unshakable awareness. And with that awareness, you finally see the pattern. Not just in them, but in yourself. You see where you tolerated too much. Where you kept giving when they kept taking. Where you made excuses for behavior that should have never been allowed past the first warning. This isn't about blaming yourself. This is about accountability. Radical, honest, liberating accountability. Because the person you used to be, the one who doubted their own worth, the one who hoped love would be enough to change them, the one who clung to potential, ignored red flags, and forgave in advance, that person is gone. They had to go, for you to emerge. Now, you no longer crave validation from the very hands that once tore you down. Now, you no longer confuse chaos for passion. Now, you no longer mistake inconsistency for mystery, or coldness for depth. You've outgrown the illusions. The ones that made you settle. The ones that made you question your standards. The ones that convinced you that hard love was still love. But real love doesn't hurt like that. Real love doesn't require you to abandon yourself. Real love doesn't weaponize your empathy or feed off your silence. And when you finally realize that, deep in your bones, you stop reaching backward. You stop wondering what could have been. You stop fantasizing about who they might have become if only you had given more time, more effort, more pieces of yourself. Because you gave enough. You gave more than enough. And they took more than they ever deserved. So now, you walk. Not bitter. Not broken. But awake. Now, you hold your standards with pride, not apology. Now, you say no without guilt. Now, you trust your instincts, the very instincts they tried to make you doubt. You don't second-guess your boundaries anymore. You enforce them. Not out of fear, but out of deep-rooted self-trust. You know who you are now. You've met the version of yourself that doesn't need chaos to feel alive. You've met the version of yourself that finds peace in solitude, that sees red flags and doesn't paint them white. And this version is not someone they'll ever meet again. Because access to you isn't cheap anymore. Because healing taught you that survival wasn't enough, you want wholeness. And not everyone deserves to witness that glow. So let them miss you. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the silence they once took for granted. You owe them no explanation. No closure. No final conversation. They had their chance. Now, it's your time. To rebuild. To breathe. To protect. To rise. They damaged you with intent. You chose to heal on purpose. And that choice? That's where your power lives now. Unshaken. Unreachable. Unapologetically free. And the story continues, not with them, but with you. And with you, the story becomes something entirely new. No longer a tale of survival, but of becoming. No longer circling the same wounds, but writing new chapters, ones they will never be part of. Because this journey you're on now, it's sacred, it's quiet, and it's yours. There's no need to announce your healing. There's no need to prove your growth. You don't need to show anyone how far you've come. The right ones will feel it in your presence. The wrong ones will feel it in your absence. You no longer chase closure because you are the closure. You don't chase answers from people who only ever spoke in confusion. You don't look for truth in the mouths of those who only ever gave you silence or manipulation. You found something better than closure. You found self-respect. And that changed everything. Now you understand, not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some arrive as lessons. Some as mirrors. Some as warnings. And some exist only to awaken the part of you that refuses to settle ever again. Let them stay where they chose to leave you. Let them sit in the story where they stopped showing up. You are not responsible for their growth. You are not responsible for their regret. You are not responsible for the version of you they never valued. You're not here to carry people. You're here to evolve. And evolution requires release. Of people. Of stories. Of expectations. Of illusions. This is what healing actually looks like, not pretty, not perfect, not polished. But real. Honest. Messy. And powerful. It looks like crying in silence because you finally said no. It looks like walking away and not turning around this time. It looks like outgrowing conversations that once kept you trapped. It looks like learning to be okay without the apology, without the explanation, without the happy ending. Because you are the ending. You are the beginning. You are the middle. You are the whole story now. And you get to choose what happens next. They damaged you with intent. Let that remain the fact that it is undiluted, unarguable, undeniable. But let it also be the thing that taught you how to protect your spirit, your mind, your energy. They showed you exactly who they were. You believed them. And then, you left. And that was your victory. Not loud. Not vengeful. But final. You will not be returning. Not because you're angry, but because you've risen too far to kneel again. The door is closed. The lesson is learned. The chapter is finished. Now comes the part they don't get to see. The rise. The joy. The strength. The real, unshakable peace of someone who faced the storm and chose stillness over the noise. You carry that stillness now. And wherever you go, it protects you. Because it was built, not given. Earned, not borrowed. Fought for in silence, and defended with every boundary you now honor without flinching. Let them call it cold. Let them call it cruel. Let them make up stories to ease the sting of your absence. You don't need to correct the narrative. Because the truth doesn't need defending. And you're done defending yourself for growing. You're done explaining why you walked away. You're done being the soft place to land for people who never caught you when you fell. This is your time now. No longer defined by what they did, but by who you chose to become in the aftermath. You are not what they broke. You are what rose from it. Steady, strong, stoic. And you are just getting started. And yes, there will still be moments. Moments where the memory sneaks in. A scent, a song, a sudden wave of silence that reminds you of how loud it used to be when they were around. It's normal. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without reopening the wound. You will think of what was said, of what wasn't said, of the things you tolerated because you loved with an open heart. And that's not weakness, it's proof of how deep your heart once reached. But even the deepest hearts must eventually close the door to what drains them. There is no shame in having loved someone who hurt you. The shame would have been staying. The mistake would have been returning. But you didn't. You chose yourself. Quietly, painfully, completely. And maybe they expected a war. Maybe they expected drama. But you gave them none of that. You gave them only what they gave you in the end. Silence, distance, finality. They expected to be missed, to be chased, to be forgiven before they changed. But you became the version of yourself that finally stopped making excuses for their patterns. You stopped saying, they didn't mean it. You stopped asking, was it my fault? You stopped hoping they would suddenly become someone capable of love, truth, and consistency. Because the truth is, they were never confused. They were comfortable. Comfortable knowing you'd always be there. Until the day you weren't. And now, your absence is their mirror. Now, the space you left behind is louder than any argument. Because there's nothing more deafening than the silence of someone who has finally had enough. That silence says, I learned, I grew, and I won't go back to who I had to be in order to love you. And from that place, you don't need revenge. You don't need karma to do the work. You don't need apologies spoken too late. You already have the only thing you ever truly needed, yourself. Whole, awake, unshaken, and unwilling to settle for anything less than truth, depth, and peace. You see now. Some people love the version of you that doesn't know any better. Some love the version of you who keeps giving after being emptied. But no one who truly values you asks you to become less in order to keep their love. Real connection honors your growth. Real love respects your boundaries. Real presence doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient. You know that now. Not just in your mind, but in your soul. You feel it when you no longer rush to respond to every message. When you no longer check in on those who never checked on you. When you no longer offer warmth where it was never appreciated. You aren't angry anymore. You're done. There's a difference. One burns out. The other builds something new. So you continue. Day by day. Quietly becoming untouchable, not because you're hardened, but because you're finally whole. They damaged you with intent. And you walked away with clarity. That clarity? It's your shield. Your compass. Your quiet power in a world that wanted you to crumble. But you didn't. And you won't. Because now, you know what you're worth. And you'd rather walk alone in truth than stay surrounded by lies. The road ahead is yours. And you're walking it with purpose now. No noise. No baggage. No second chances for those who knew exactly what they were doing. Only peace. Only discipline. Only forward. Always forward. So now you know. They didn't make a mistake. They made a choice. And now, so have you. You chose to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You chose to close the door they kept walking through only to bring more damage. You chose to stop seeking closure from the hands that broke you. That choice, your choice, is what changed everything. This isn't about hate. This isn't about revenge. This is about clarity. About protecting the peace you had to fight for. About never again negotiating your worth just to keep someone who never deserved to stay. You held on for as long as you could. But now, you hold your ground. With calm. With strength. With silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. They damaged you with intent. And you? You healed with purpose. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you were finally strong enough to. And the most powerful thing you'll ever do is never go back. Is never go back. Stay grounded. Stay clear. Stay free. And never forget what it took to become who you are now. Because this is who they'll never get to know again. This is who you were always meant to be. Unshakable. Unreachable. Unapologetically whole. If this message spoke to you, if you felt the pain of intentional betrayal, and the quiet power of choosing yourself, like this video to let others know they're not alone. Subscribe if you're walking your own path of healing, growth, and clarity. We're building a space here, for thinkers, for feelers, for those who choose peace over chaos. And if you have something to say, drop it in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Keep holding your ground. I'll see you in the next one. Stay stoic. Stay strong.